Thank you for joining us, Senator.
Thank you.
This is Senator Amy Klobuchar, ranking member of the Senate Agriculture Committee.
And I just want to clarify, I would not have canceled because of a snowstorm.
I was actually going to...
You were going to ask me
I was going to make that point, actually.
Oh, wow.
I knew that you would say that. Unfortunately, Senator Boozman couldn't be with us today after we had to reschedule this, but we're really looking forward to the conversation today. So thanks for joining us in much, much warmer weather. So everyone is thinking right now, is there going to be a shutdown? What are Democrats going to do? So top of mind, how are you thinking about this? How do you plan to vote? And what are your Democratic colleagues going to do?
Well, I think it's clear that we want to see something else, and we are united on getting this 30-day CR, so we are able then to negotiate like we always have during these moments. And we'd like to get a real budget. Senator Murray, Senator Collins actually get along quite well. They've been having very good negotiations, and we're really concerned, obviously, about some of the things that you see out of that House bill, as were our Democratic colleagues in the House.
If there is a shutdown, what do you think that would mean for farmers, for ranchers, for consumers?
Yeah, well, none of this is good for farmers and ranchers, and the last thing that I want to see is a shutdown. But I would add that what we've been seeing during the first 50 days, I know these are called 100-day events, right?
Yes.
We're just past 50, and it feels like we've been in like for 500 days. But
yeah.
What we have seen has been an unbelievable grouping of policies that are not good for our farmers and ranchers. And I'm sure you'll ask about this a little more, but we have everything from tariffs, which hit our farmers and ranchers like probably no other group. They are already operating on thin margins. 20% of what the value of agriculture that's produced goes into exports. That's a great thing for our country. But they're now starting to see retaliatory tariffs, which is understandable, from friendly neighbors like Canada. Over 40% of our corn is exported to Mexico, over 40% of our ethanol to Canada. My state's the fourth biggest agriculture exporting state in the nation. So we're just getting deluged with questions about why is this happening. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the laying off and freezing of funds, people who are working on issues right in front of them. Avian flu obviously is something that predated this administration, but we need to do more when it comes. I'm glad they have a plan out there, but we have to do more when it comes to turkey, dairy cattle, and the like. So all of this is coming at them at once. And then finally, the workforce problem, which has always been out there, but is getting worse. So that makes it a really hard for our farmers and ranchers. And I just hope they change course, because this is not sustainable in rural America.
So I want to get into this conversation on tariffs that you brought up. The 80% of the U.S. supply of fertilizer ingredient potash comes from Canada. And the president ultimately did lessen that tariff from 25% to 10% on Canada. What do you think that says about the president's willingness to kind of engage with feedback and respond to feedback, especially on his tariff policy?
Well, it is clear that when people talk to him, that can make a difference. So you can imagine all the groups, everyone is trying to get in to talk to someone at the White House. I see a few nodding of heads here, including the Agriculture Secretary, of course, I know was concerned about the potash issue. But that being said, all of these other tariffs and the uncertainty of them, even when they're paused, now it's down to 10%, but you don't know at what moment with them it's going to suddenly escalate. When you are in another country and your livelihood depends on getting some part of a supply chain in manufacturing, or if it depends on some kind of agricultural ingredient, and suddenly you have this tariff that is suspended but may come back, and it's been proven to come back in other instances already, you just start looking for other suppliers. You say, is there something in Brazil I could buy? Maybe I'll look somewhere in another country, and that's the problem. And I continue on an international basis for national security and economics. Do not understand why the president's so interested in working with Russia. I get it with trying to have peace negotiations, but talking about Russia, which is only, I think, 2 to 3% of the world's economy, when our allies, this grouping of the US, Canada, Mexico, our USMCA group, and then you add in Europe, you add in South Korea, Japan, that's 50% of the world's economy. And so I don't understand why you wouldn't, when you're dealing with China and Russia, want to actually have better trading relationships with your friends. And I think the way to negotiate this is in the USMCA. That was one of the crown jewels of the first Trump administration. I supported it on the presidential debate stage, the first Democrat to support it. There are still issues with it, with dairy and the like, that have to be negotiated, and that is the place that you negotiate these, not by just declaring yourself king and putting in 50% tariffs and then saying, oh, I'm going to do 25%. Let's see what it's like. And it is real hard to get the Premier of Ontario to unite with the Liberal government right now, but that's where they are. And it is equally hard to get Minnesota and Canadian hockey fans to boo at each other, but that is quite an accomplishment that he has wrought in just the first 50 days.
So I want to ask you a little bit more about that. You made this point about you and some of your colleagues on both sides of the aisle have called for the Trump administration to level the playing field with Canada for U.S. farmers, and you're kind of alluding to that just now. But at the same time, you've also criticized the Trump administration for jeopardizing trade partnerships and all these retaliatory tariffs we're seeing from other countries. How are you balancing that, and how do you see a way forward to kind of navigate both of those desires?
The first part is being the what on the economic
part? Sorry, the first part was that you and your colleagues have want to level the playing field with Canada for U.S. farmers, thinking of dairy tariffs specifically.
I think it's what I just said. You use the USMCA to make improvements there. There's lots of opportunities to do that within that trade negotiation. I also did not oppose some of the, and in fact supported some of the very targeted tariffs that help, say, iron ore mining in Minnesota. But now when you look at these aluminum and steel tariffs to the amount that they're going, to me, some people found the first ones controversial. I was supportive of those. Biden continued those. But when you go up to this next level that he's going, I think that goes too far. So I've always been in favor of using tariffs and said it repeatedly on a targeted basis. That is not what he's doing here. This is a much different game, much different amount of tariffs, resulting in, for certain, retaliatory actions, including the ones in China that are now up to 20%, which of course is devastating for the soybean market and many other agriculture markets for our farmers.
So switching gears here a little bit.
One more thing I just want to add to just talk about ag, because we're doing ag, so going all ag on you, but the real cost for Americans is the over $2,000 per family tax this is going to result in if you implemented all these things that he has actually put out on the table. It started out as $1,200 per family when he was messing around with like 10%, and now it's up to over $2,000 per family per year. And when you read Mitch McConnell's remarks about the cost for consumers, about tariffs at the Ag Committee, you can't tell if it's me or Mitch McConnell. That's weird. Okay.
So switching gears here a little bit, everyone is wondering, are we going to get a farm bill this year? What are the conversations you're having with Senator Bozen? What is the bipartisan plan to actually get that done before September?
Sure. So Senator Bozeman and I have a very good friendship. He actually came out to Minnesota last year, spent a whole day going to barns, going to meet with our groups, including nutrition and conservation groups. So that's a good start. Our staffs have been working well together, and as have the ag leaders in the House. One of them just happens to be in Minnesota, Angie Craig. And so my hope is that we can get a farm bill done. But now that the Republicans run the Senate, the House, and the administration, they're going to have to come with a plan and a way to do it. I think we've always had bipartisan support for the farm bill. It's the only way to pass it. So the nutrition pieces of it and the conservation piece of it, very, very important to the members of the Democratic caucus. Many of them have states. They vote for the Farm Bill in part because they believe in agriculture, they do. But for them, what's most important is the nutrition programs and the conservation. If that's not in there, or if it's greatly reduced, that is a problem in terms of trying to get the votes that we need to pass the Farm Bill. I am well aware of all the struggles that our farmers have. They have them in my state. But we know to get this done, we've got to have a coalition. And also that coalition, when you look at some of the conservation, voluntary conservation programs, CRP, CSP, EQIP, it helps our farmers as well. They like those programs. They're voluntary, they can decide if they use them, but they like them. If you look at nutrition, who grows the food? Our farmers and ranchers. And so this is an ecosystem. It's not just, oh, this helps this group, this helps the other group. There's a reason it's all in one piece of legislation.
So we've reported that USDA has cut jobs at the farm loan officers. They've cut soil conservationists, folks who help farmers farm. They've cut foresters and all kinds of different staff, about over 5,000 employees, probationary employees. And they've preliminarily brought those folks back. But a lot of them are
just
not working right now.
Just what you want to do in a workplace.
So, I mean, my question to you is,
oh, you're not.
Yeah, what does that mean for farmers and ranchers? It's planting season. What are you hearing in your state?
I'll go beyond USDA for a bit, because this actually wasn't just the USDA, as you all know. This was a decision with Doge coming in and Elon Musk, and they decided, the Trump administration, to fire all the probationary employees. Just think, if you're a business person coming in, you got a new business, you got to make some cuts. You've said you are, you've got shareholders, and so you want to make some changes. What do? Well, you look at lines of business. This is one thing we want to change. You look at employees based on merit. You look at your overall cost. In this case, they decided, the administration, to fire the less expensive employees, the people that had been there 2 years. That's not usually what you do. Less expensive, a lot of times, are the most excited about their new jobs. And then you also have, wait a minute, terminated the ones that just got promotions. They're also on probation when they get a promotion. To me, that is the last thing you want to do. It is true, and Brooke Rawlings made it clear on the avian flu especially, that they are going to actually add resources to that, that they rehired some of them and they rehired some of the probationary employees. That's a good thing, but we are still trying to get answers. Fire Service, Senator Bennett and I and others have sent a letter on this and saying what is happening with the fire service right at a time, the Forest Service, right at a time when you're seeing all of these fires all across the nation, what's happening with some of these FSA employees. You can just have serendipity that if you just do the probationary, you could have one office that suddenly has no one because they had new employees, and one office that's fully staffed. And so that is an example of why we want answers on exactly who has been fired and what their plans are going forward.
Well, thank you, Senator. I think that's all the
Okay.
time we have.
All right. Well, this was great, and look forward to working with you, and hopefully we'll have some good news on a farm bill. But with all of the chaos up, corruption up, costs up, just ask anyone in the ag aisle. I think it does create headwinds that make it very hard to work on a farm bill. So I hope we get in a better place on all of this for ag. There's certainly a demand to get a farm bill done, and that's what I want to do.
Thank you,
Okay?
Senator. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.